Hi there, welcome back to the Mindset Check podcast. I'm your host, Misha McKittrick. This is a podcast where we believe that you have more power than you think you do, and where we believe that you have the ability to change your reality because of the choices that you make and the awareness of the choices you expose yourself to. In this first season of the Mindset Check podcast, we are reading through my journal, the journal that I kept when I was 15 years old, as I tackled a few tough years of being pregnant and losing my little girl. If you want to start from the beginning, you can start at episode 1, or you can just jump in with us today as we talk about choices and transformation. And usually I love to give you a recap of everybody that's in the episode so you really know what's going on and don't miss anything. But really, if you've been hanging out with us, you know who Laura is. She's a friend of mine, and Jessie is the person that I'm married to at the time, and Taylor, my daughter. So it's a pretty simple episode in that way. Let's jump in. September 7th, 1994. Today sucked. I walked home from school. Jessie was supposed to pick me up, but was a little late. So I walked all the way from 32nd to 3rd Street, carrying Taylor and walking in sandals. I have blisters on my feet and walked for an hour and 20 minutes straight. Anyway, I finally got a letter from Laura, and she said she's already picked a family for her child. Last weekend, we went camping with my family, and we went to Milford for a night. We have car troubles and no money. We can't even afford car insurance. We also put Taylor in a baby contest, but she was asleep. And it was raining when they judged her. Bad luck. I cut her hair again today. I found some friends at school. Pete and I get along 1 minute, and the next, I don't want to hear his voice. I'm very confused with everything that's going on. Wow. So looking back on the memory of that walk, and then also looking at what I wrote, is really interesting, because I just think it's interesting to break this apart, because it says he was a little late. And I wouldn't have started walking if he was a little late. You know, I grew up in the time when there were no cell phones, and sometimes my mom was late and I had to wait on the high school lawn out front for a long time. You know, that was just the way things were. Now kids can call their mom and they're there in 10 minutes and, you know, whatever. Things were different. Our mindset, we expected to wait longer. I wasn't an impatient person. And so in my mind, I know he was late, and I think it's interesting that my perspective recorded that he was a little late. And I remember that walk like, you know, kind of one of those memories that get burned into your mind. Because I had this little girl who, she fell asleep on me, which is one of the most sweet and endearing things, right? To carry this sleeping child. But I also had my diaper bag and my books. And when a baby falls asleep on you, it's like the full weight of them, right? When they're awake and they're kind of supporting some of their body weight, it feels a little bit different. And I just remember in my mind walking and walking and walking and being like, I can't believe this is happening. I can't believe I'm in a town where I know like very little people. Jesse really didn't show up for me. And I remember he did feel horrible. But it happened. It happened. And what's interesting is there was a city bus, but I had no idea how to ride a city bus because I was from small town USA. And And what's even more interesting is it was right after this event, soon after this event happened, that I did start taking the city bus, and it became a new way of transportation for me. And I can even remember walking with my baby in the snow to the bus. So, the stories of your grandparents saying, I walked uphill to school both ways. How's that one? How is it? I walked to the bus with my baby in the snow. How's that? I'll tell you what, I know that it makes what's happening in the next episode even more endearing, but that kind of started happening. And I remember also being on the city bus and having that being my new way of transportation and really being frightened almost because there was a lot of very, what do you say, like colorful people or, people that actually felt, a little threatening to me on the bus sometimes. And I really just tried to keep to myself. And, we're talking about like downtown in a big city, not huge, but a bigger city. And it's just, you can kind of see all walks of life. And I remember at times, feeling that little bit of a threat. Yeah. I also remember, let's see. Yeah. More about Lara. I would love to have a conversation with her and talk to her about her memories and looking back on picking a family for her child and, everything and all the feelings that went into doing that. I say that I found some friends at school, and that was awesome. Starting to make friends and really starting to connect with people and sharing similar stories and getting some of the very best advice also from some of the people there at school that we'll talk about in the next episode. So I think looking back, there was just a little line that said that I went camping with my family last weekend. We went to a family reunion, and I have a couple of memories from that family reunion. And I always wish sometimes when I'm reading my journal and looking back, I'm just like, "Ooh, tell me more." Write down more about what happened right there. I also said that I felt very confused with everything that's going on with Jesse and my feelings and trying to, live in between where 1 minute, like we're getting along and the next minute, like I feel really very irritated and I don't want to be around him, kind of, I think as a way of also protecting myself. But at that family reunion, I can remember a conversation, an event with my dad. And I don't remember everything that was said. I can vividly remember where my car was parked and this walk. My dad just said, "Hey, Mish, can you and I just go for a walk? Just you and I." My mom or my sisters probably watched Taylor. Jesse was there camping with us, but my dad and I went for a walk. And my dad was awesome about carving away time like that. And just really making sure that he was connecting with me, his kids. That's just kind of his style. Let's go for a walk. Let's go for a drive. And I remember walking side by side, and at times his arm was around me, and I remember how I felt. I remember I felt very supported and that he was letting me know that he was in my corner and on my side. And I think giving me a glimpse and starting to open my eyes into choice. I think my dad, that was like the beginning part of him helping me see that I had a choice. Because it's interesting that sometimes we abandon our own thoughts and feelings because of what we're dedicated to, or because of what we, the ways that we're committed out of love. We're committed to, the long-term game, or this child having a mom and a dad. And, I was also really brought up in the arena of, you don't abandon things. You make a choice and you stand in it and you stick with it, and you kind of just, it's what you do. And I know that my dad, could see the bigger picture, because he obviously was a lot more advanced in his years and his wisdom. And I remember just that feeling of him walking with me and just helping me to find a voice, to find and evaluate and think about, I do have a choice. Because I think when we're so committed to something, when we are standing inside of something that we had already previously made a choice about, we become unaware of our choices. Does that make sense? It's kind of like how, have you heard of the elephant and the rope? Do you know this one where they tie the elephants up with a rope when they're small? And as they grow, obviously when they're small, that rope constrains them. Like they're not able to break it or to get away or to escape. But as the elephants grow, they don't try anymore. And so all that it takes for the trainers to hold them, to keep them in the spot that they want them, is to put that rope that held the young elephant, okay, even though the elephant grows up and is strong enough to get away. The elephants believe that the rope can still hold them, so they never try to break free. They can't see their choice. And I think that I was definitely in the arena of learning that I had a choice. I can actually remember driving with Jesse on a hot summer day. This was really early in our relationship. And I remember being hot. And we were in a car that didn't have air conditioning. And he said, "Are you hot?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Well, why don't you roll down your window?" And that had never really occurred to me, simply probably because the cars I grew up in had air conditioning and we were riding in something that was new, or, it didn't occur to me. Of course, it's also interesting that we grew up in the day of, roll down the window, actually physically, right? But I remember having a moment where I was like, oh yeah, of course, roll down my window. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's air, right? But isn't it interesting that sometimes we go through life not seeing that we have a choice? And so if you are at a place right now where you feel like you don't have a choice or a voice, or maybe you're in that spot and you don't see it, maybe we need to go for a little walk and just plant the idea or the seed to help you see that you do have a choice. And yours might not be about leaving a husband who's not good to you. Yours might be about creating a life that's better. But you didn't know you had a choice in it. Interesting, right? Let that sit and resonate, and whatever is kind of stirring up in you, just let it continue to stir up. I like to think of the frog in the pot of boiling water. Do you guys know this analogy? The idea is that you can put a frog in room temperature water, and that as the water heats up, the frog won't notice, and so it doesn't jump out, and it just dies. Well, it is a fable, and it's actually not true. It's false, right? That kind of blew my mind, because I always knew of the frog in the pot of boiling water, and the frog just gives up. But when the temperature actually starts to get uncomfortable, the frog has basic survival instincts. And he does get out of the pot. He jumps out of the pot. And I actually love learning that that story is false. Because it helps us go, oh, we have those instincts too. We, like the frog, can rethink, re-question, reevaluate what we're doing, the pot that we're in. One of the biggest ways that I think that we do this, like we allow ourselves to be in a pot where the temperature keeps rising. I see so many people who are so busy and overwhelmed allowing life to happen to them instead of creating it, instead of choosing it. It blows my mind. And it actually blows my mind how much time it took me to really grasp this. I feel like I've, learned little by little as I've kind of gone through life, but I've never truly understood the deep layers of our brain and how our subconscious mind brings into our life what we believe in those deep subconscious layers, like what we've talked about in previous episodes, especially in episode 17. Understanding that what's happening inside of our brain is a belief. And what happens with our subconscious mind is that we attract what we believe. And so the same way that my dad went for a walk with me and started to plant a seed to help me see that I had a choice. Just to start to see it. It started to hinge my belief that maybe I didn't have to stay if circumstances were XYZ. So maybe there's a belief inside of your brain that you can alter that will change the way the future is for you. There are so many limiting beliefs that people hold on to. Limiting beliefs like, I'm not really like a sociable person. People don't really want to hang out with me. Or I can't really be my true self around people. Or life is always made up of just trying to get by till the next paycheck. There's a limit on things. We always carry with us different limiting beliefs. And a huge part of life and really learning how to create and live life is learning how to unlearn some of the thoughts and beliefs that we've had and changing those beliefs. Let's look at it through this popular adage. So I used to love this expression. Hope for the best and expect the worst. Are you familiar with that? Well, if it's true that we get out of life exactly what we expect out on like a subconscious level, then isn't this quote just teaching us to happily accept the worst? I always looked at this quote like, yes, like hope for the very best, and then let's make sure that we're not going to get crushed if our expectations fall, right? If it doesn't come through for us. And so we're setting ourselves up to just basically expect anything out of life. Just allowing life to happen. So if you really look at it and you say, well, which one's going to win? The very best or the worst? Hoping for the best or expecting the worst? Which one's going to win? And the one that wins is the one that we think about and believe the most. And so if we're saying, okay, I'm going to hope for the best and I really think that's going to happen and and that's where I spend most of my energy, and I'm going to say, but I'm going to be okay with it if the best doesn't happen. Like I'm going to be able to accept that. But we spend most of our energy in like hoping for the best and planning for the best and, expecting the best. But remember, the adage actually says to expect the worst. So if we're like, yeah, maybe someday the very best could happen, but actually what really comes out of life is that life sucks. That's us spending more time in expecting the worst. And I'm telling you, whatever one you believe the most is the one that wins. So that quote used to be a part of my belief system. It used to be like a backbone of something I was like, yeah, that's the best way to go through life. But I let it go because it's not serving me. And it's that easy to let go of thoughts that don't serve you. So now I'm like, how about we hope for the best and expect the best? How about if we change our reality? How about every single day that rolls by comes because of the choices that we make inside of those days? I love this quote by an unknown author that says, "Today I am what I am because of my yesterday's choices, and where I shall be tomorrow will be decided today." The little choices, the little things that we choose to believe, the way that we allow our conscious mind to affect our subconscious mind, the way that we tell ourselves to begin to believe that the best is going to happen for us, that we outline specific things. Next week, we're going on a trip with our family. Our family hasn't traveled a lot. We're so excited. I had to change my belief that that was possible for us, for me, for us. I created a vision board, and it's funny that like 4 of the pictures that were on that vision board were not in direct correlation because of an affirmation that I was saying, a new belief that I was trying to bring into my life. I realized the other day, as I had booked lots of different things that we're going to be doing, that 4 of the pictures on my vision board, or maybe 5, are all things we're going to be doing on this trip, like extreme, really fun things. But I had to change my own belief. And it didn't happen overnight. It didn't happen like the frog just jumped out of the water, It would be really cool if things happened like that. But it happened gradually over time. It was something that I've been telling myself in my affirmations morning and night for over a year. Buddha said, "What you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create." Those are the adages I'm shifting towards. That I have power and that I can create my life. And that transformation is such a big part of that. We need transformation to become what we're intended to be. To become what we need to be in this journey of life. So I think it's really interesting to break down how most of the time transformation doesn't happen automatically like that frog. How it happens gradually. And my friend sent me something the other day that I thought was really, I had chills all over my body when I read it. There's a song called Bend. And I'll link it in the show notes and you can look it up if you want. It is really beautiful, and it talks about how in life we need to bend so that we don't break. When the winds blow wild, lean in and rest a while. So sometimes as we're navigating through life and we want to force something, we want to bring something different into our life, sometimes we have a tendency to force it. Or if something is happening that is negative in our life, we resist it so much. And there's so much to be learned from the adage of bending. Bending. Being brave and bending so that we don't break. And not bending alone, bending with other people. And being people who also are there for people who are bending. That's kind of the motive and the trajectory of the song. My friend wrote, bending to dry tears, bending to find strength, bending to let go, bending to hang on, bending to find healing, bending to believe, to change, to find faith, to keep hope, bending to find breath, to find understanding, to lift others, to have clarity. I love this one, bending to improve self, bending to dispel fear, bending to be still, bending to see God's love, bending to stay above, up, down, inward, outward, sometimes ever so quietly, sometimes loudly and desperately, bending when the winds blow, bending to rest, bend to be brave, bend, don't break. Her words that she wrote the last few years have required much bending to keep standing, and I am standing. Those I love are still standing, thank God. Aren't we all warriors in the bending of life? Isn't it beautiful? Just the symbolism behind bending. And learning that you have a choice and you have a voice. And remind yourself that it happens gradually. It happens with the choices that you make every day, and it starts with being willing to see the truth, being willing to see what's staring back at you. Sometimes admitting, sometimes letting go, sometimes unlearning. It's a fine line. I remember my dad, he used to do this thing where he would call me. This is when I was in college, and he termed a nickname for me that was girlfriend, okay, Guff, because we went to this incredible this work party of his. It was in San Francisco. I flew on a plane. I met him there, and it was just him and I. And we went, he had some work meetings, and I kind of toured around San Francisco during the daytime. And then when he was available, we'd tour together, and it was awesome. It was a really fun trip. One of the nights there was this party, and my dad and I love to dance. We love to dance. And so there was this party where there was a lot of, amazing food and a huge dance floor and a live band. And my dad and I were like, yes, tonight's the night, right? Like, we're going to have so much fun. And we danced and we danced and we danced. And we had people ask us if they could hire us for their next party, right? Because they thought we were there to get the party started. And oh my gosh, there would be times where we would find ourselves on the opposite ends of the dance floor. And then he would do this move where he would throw this sounds kind of corny and cheesy, but it's so funny. He would throw this fishing pole line, and then I would, act like a little hook got stuck in my mouth, and I would swim over, we would dance our way till we met together. And we were dripping with sweat by the end of the night, and we just had so much fun. And they played the best music, and it's just one of my very favorite memories of my dad. And some of his friends that he knew there asked him the next day if that was his girlfriend. I think that's so funny because obviously there was a huge age difference, but we had such a good laugh at it that from then on out, he called me girlfriend or guff. Well, one time my dad called me, and he always called me on the phone, and I would answer the phone. Imagine this. I would say, hello? This is before the time of caller ID, and you'd answer, and he'd be like, what's up, Guff? That's literally how he would greet me as when he would call me on the phone. What's up, Guff? Or he would say, what's up, girlfriend? And that was his nickname for me from then on out. And he said, girlfriend, oh my gosh, listen, I have this all figured out. I figured it all out. And I'm like, you figured out what, Dad? You figured out what? And he said, I figured out life. And I'm like, okay. He was seriously so excited. And he said, Mish, I think that life can all be summed up into 3 things. He's like, are you ready for him? I'm like, okay, what is it? And he goes, are you ready? Are you ready? I'm so excited to tell you. Are you ready? And I'm like, yes, Dad. Okay, I'm ready. And he said, balance, memories, and celebrating life. He said, I think life can be summed up into all 3 of those categories. And then we have had really deep and meaningful conversations about those categories and the way that life fits into those categories. But I think about balance when I think about bending. I think about balance when I think about choices that we have to make. And the awareness that there are more choices than perhaps what's happening right now in our life. We have an opportunity to see more choice, that we have a voice, and that there are possibilities, and that transformation is possible. Yes, it's gradual, and so sometimes we get discouraged, but we have the possibility for that. And I think looking at our past transformations and the possibilities that has brought into our life, the transformation that it's brought into our life, helps us see that it's more possible for our future. That we have the possibility to transform. We have the possibility to change our belief that's embedded deep inside of our subconscious. We have a choice. I'm going to leave you with one quote by John C. Maxwell. And he said, life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. So metaphorically, we went on a walk today, the same way that my dad went on a walk with me. And I hope by some measure that it helps you see that you have more power than you think you do. You know how I always say that I am a huge believer that our stories help others? I wanted to share just a little something with you to encourage you and to help you understand that your story helps other people. It really does. I was talking to a friend today, and she was sharing with me some very deep and personal experiences that have happened to her in the last month. And I told her, thank you, for sharing with me. And of course she was like, thank you so much for being a listening ear, right? Because our stories also become validating when they help other people. It's amazing. And so as we were having this conversation, I helped her see that because she said, you know what? I probably wouldn't have shared with just anybody. And I was like, well, have you shared with, your kids, your family, whatever, And it's really important, like a really important story. And she was kind of like, oh, I think I'm just going to hold this one close. And I was talking to her about how God doesn't always give us stories just so we can hold them close. He gives us stories so that we can help other people. And I've also been really touched this week because I've started to see one way that this podcast has helped someone that's actually very close to this story. And without giving you details, it's just really neat to see how sharing is unlocking the possibility for more and more healing. So I just want you to remember that as you go about your day, your week, whatever's coming up for you. That if it's on your heart to share something, and especially if it's something that's a personal story of yours, with one or some people, you have a voice, and you were given that story for a reason, and you were given the thought to share it for a reason. So I just wanted to leave you with a little bit of that encouragement, because being able to share this story is awe-inspiring for me. And of course, you all know that it was put on my heart to share this story. And so, otherwise I don't think I would have just thought that this would have been a good idea. But I'm grateful for how vulnerable it keeps me. If you end up, you don't need to tell me your story if you don't want to, but if you end up being encouraged to do that, I would love to know. So reach out to me if you have any other thoughts or questions or anything you want to share. You can reach out to me and email me at hello@myfriendmisha.com, or you can DM me on Instagram at myfriendmisha, and I would love to hear from you. Please never forget that this podcast can grow with your help. I would love it if you think it would help someone if you'll share it. And hey, just wanted to say thank you so much for letting me walk through a part of your journey with you again today. Remember that as you take time for a mindset check, you'll be able to see more clearly the choices that you do have in front of you. And that opens the door to the power that you have inside those choices. Until next time, my friend.